Kia ora koutou, malo, kia ora, hello, how you going? Welcome everyone to the Render Radio tonight. We are glad to have you with us. I am Cliff Thompson, pastor at the Render Gathering, and I'm excited and very, very glad that you are joining us here this evening. We've got a great guest, a special guest again to come in and talk to us about leadership, life, passion, a whole lot of raft of other stuff. But before we get to any of that tonight, I would like to say welcome to the man with the greatest beard in all of South Auckland. Say hello, brother.
Kia ora, konnichiwa, ni hao, talofa. It's our time.
All right. Anyway, let's jump to the section we've all been waiting for. Is our special guest tonight, and this one it really is. We're really excited about having this person on. His name is Grant Harris. He is pastor, entrepreneur, father, grandfather, husband, chaplain. We're going to talk a lot about all of this sort of stuff tonight with him. But before I do bring him in, I just want to make mention, so Grant has been the chaplain for the Breakers, I think the last 10 years, and he can talk a little bit about how some of that's changing for him now, the New Zealand Breakers. And he's been with them through their title run seasons, which is pretty cool. But he's also been the senior pastor of Windsor Park Baptist, which is known as one of New Zealand's, let's call it New Zealand's premier Baptist churches, New Zealand's finest Baptist churches. But he is overall a great guy. He loves a bit of banter, loves a bit of fun, loves to talk, loves to have a laugh. But obviously you can't lead the things that he leads without being a great leader as well. So we're going to welcome in Grant now. Let's bring him into the show.
Kia ora.
Yay. Hey, Grant.
Kia ora, Grant.
You could actually call me Greedo Solo if you like.
There you go.
That's nice.
Greedo Solo. Welcome to the show, Greedo Solo. It's great to have you, bro. Yeah, it is really great to have you. May the force be with you. We really appreciate you being here with us tonight, Grant. And like I said, I've given a really quick synopsis of some of the things that you're involved in more so. I wanted to not talk so much about where you've come from and your whānau, to give you that platform and opportunity to share a little bit with us about who you are as a person, as an individual. So that'll be our start point tonight. Tell us a little bit about you, your whānau, sort of what's led you to where you are today.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. And great to those that are joining us on a Friday night, waking up from your couch or wherever you've been doing. Level 2, maybe you've been out. The weirdest thing for level 2 for me is when level 3 came in, we just lived down the road from a KFC. And the queue that night on that Tuesday was literally 400 meters long all the way back to Constellation. And it's just almost a thing like that. Even tonight, I was coming back from the supermarket. The queue was still out onto East Coast Road where we are. I don't know. There's a lot of chickens paying the price for this. So anyway, what was I talking about for KFC? Oh, yeah, my photo, where I came from. Yeah, so great to be here. I go back to Palmerston North as my hometown. I grew up in Palmy down there, and kite flying was my speciality because it's always windy in Palmy. So that's where I came from. My parents are from Wellington originally, and so but then I shifted up to Auckland, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. But I discovered more of my roots are actually up here, which has been an interesting discovery for me since I've been up here. Mount Albert and Port Albert actually is where my earliest ancestors arrived when they came to New Zealand from England. So I found it pretty interesting discovering that since I've been up here. But yeah, born and bred in Palmerston North, and went to school down there and started my career straight out of school. I'm old enough that it was the very first year where it was sixth form internal assessment, which is year 12 now. And so I didn't quite understand that you had to work for internal assessments. So halfway through what is year 12 now, and I would have killed any of my kids to drop out of school at that time, but I did. And I went into the bank, and I started a career in banking actually straight out of school, and had 12 years working for Westpac. In the Manawatu, but then in the last number of years down in Wellington's head office where Westpac was at the time. And so I had a really great career. In fact, the career was going well. But there was a bit of a early midlife sort of crisis for me, which took a few years to work itself out actually. And there's a story around that, but really felt that God was leading me in another direction. Music was a really big part of my life, always has been, always is. As a worship leader, a keyboardist, played a range of instruments. And I was actually at the Hillsong Conference in 1996, and it was hopping off a bus. I can remember it. Sometimes you have these moments in life that you just kind of remember. And I was hopping off a bus, and just God said, I've got something else for you in life other than this. And I was like, that's interesting. So I came home and told my wife about it. And at that time, we just had a couple of little kids. My career was going well, and she wasn't too keen on anything else. So God had to work out his way in her life. But it ended up after a few years of us leaving that career, which was promising and was good, and shifted up here actually to Auckland and went to Kerry Baptist College, which was a surprise to me. I'd never considered that God would call me to be a local church pastor, and there's a story about that. And so, found ourselves up here at Kerry, and I can remember walking around the first semester going, man, I thought this place was like for spiritual people, but I'm here. But maybe they aren't. Or, I'm one of them. I don't know. It was a very confusing time. But anyway, ended up doing that for 3 years and graduated Kerry, and then was called down to what is now North Point Baptist in New Plymouth. And so we shifted down there. We had our fourth child while we were at Kerry in our middle year. So 4 children, young children, went down to Taranaki and spent 7 wonderful years down there pastoring. It was Bell Block, and I changed the name to North Point. Did a bunch of stuff down there, and it was amazing. We love Taranaki, beautiful place, and part of our heart still stays down there. But then God called us again in a significant way to come up here to Windsor Park, and again, it wasn't what I was looking for. But when God calls you, you ain't can say no for so long, and then you've just got to submit to his will, and that's the best place to be. So it was coming up the 12 years this October since we relocated up here to Auckland, and our kids at the time were early teenagers. Our eldest daughter was 14, and our youngest son was 7. So we came up here, and now our kids working the backwards. Our family, our eldest daughter is 26. She got married last year, and during lockdown had our first mokopuna, first grandson. So that was a beautiful thing. We had to look at him through a tinted window for the first couple of weeks because lockdown, and we're very proud of her. She had to have a home birth because of the restrictions on hospitals and stuff, and so it's been an amazing experience. He'll be 5 weeks this coming Sunday. And then our second son is 24, and he got married to Jess right before this all went crazy on the 29th of February. So they got married, they went on their honeymoon, they came back straight into self-isolation because they were right at the time when that was coming in. So 2 weeks of that, and then 4 weeks of lockdown, and then another 2 weeks of level 3. So they've basically been in isolation for about 8 weeks, plus their honeymoon is like 10 weeks.
Oh man, wow.
What a honeymoon.
So no, great. And then our third daughter, who's 21, she actually a week after that wedding in February, she shifted to Brisbane. Her boyfriend is playing rugby over there for Souths in Brisbane. He's actually out of West Auckland, out of Church Unlimited, Takbana's church. He went over at the start of the year with the contract with Souths, and obviously he's not playing much rugby right now. Set to resume next in June, I think. So she shifted to Brisbane, and then our youngest son is 20, and he's still with us. So he's on lockdown with us. He's an apprentice electrician. He's back at work now. So that's a little bit of my background, my family.
Yeah, that's awesome, bro. And thank you for sharing that, because we're going to get to, obviously I want to ask some questions about how you navigate some challenging seasons and as you've been through this and some of the stuff you carry. But there was something significant you said there around, and which might be helpful for a lot of people. I know, because it pricked my ears up, was when you said about how when God called, you obviously weren't at that place straight away of, that's really what I want to do. Like that's what I believed I wanted to have my life work out and do and be. What was that, not so much what was that moment for you, but how did you understand, or how did you submit? Because a lot of people struggle with that submission part to God in a lot of areas of life. But what was that part for you? What helped you to say, you know what, God, I'm going to give it over to you, even though I might not understand or I might not want to? What was that submission part for you, Grant?
I think I'd start by saying It's not quick sometimes. It takes a little bit to work out. First of all, I've always found normally, and to this day, when God says something about me, I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. It sounds hard, or I don't know what it's going to be. And then, so for me, there's always a process of discernment that goes on, for me in all of that processing, and it involves, I guess, a number of things. It involves your own discernment, and I'm a really big fan. I'm a huge fan. In fact, the older I've got, the bigger fan that I am of this, of really understanding who we are, of discovering the way that God has wired us. And I'm a real fan of, different psychometric tests that we get to do sometimes in leadership, or we do when we're applying for jobs and things like that. Understanding the way that God has wired us has become just so fundamental to who I am as a person, and that everything kind of flows out of that. And the more that I learn about that, the more that I discover my unique giftings, what makes me tick, what my capacity is, what my heart is for the world or whatever, the more I just discern and to strongly believe that, this is where God kind of works us in. We're also different. We've all got different gifts, and we're all wired a little bit differently to everybody else. And so the more I understand the way that he's wired me, the more I can just say, yeah, that seems to fit, doesn't it? That seems logical in some ways. That feels like it's a good thing for me. And it doesn't mean that it's comfortable. Normally, the good stuff happens outside our comfort zones, but there's a certain resonance that goes on when, if God called me to be a mechanic, I'd be like, nah, bro, I'm not good at engines. And I know that, and I'm not good at a whole bunch of stuff, but I am good at these things. And I just believe that God has a place for us that capitalizes upon our strengths. So I'll go for that. I mean, that's a good thing. The other thing for me that I've always used is wise counsel, is the voices of others. I remember when I first felt God say to me that, local church ministry is for you. I'd never thought about that before. Normally when you feel God calling you, you think you're going to be a missionary or something like that. Or back in my day, that was kind of like for super Christians. And I hadn't thought about it in the past. So when that came across, and it was literally I'm old enough that I just got the internet, and my kids don't even believe there was a time in history without the internet, but we just got it, and we were living in Wellington. It was dial up, all those noises. And for some reason, the homepage of Kerry came up. Maybe I was looking for something, and I just felt God say, there's where I want you to go to train to be a local pastor. And for that next month, I spent a lot of time just ringing and speaking to some of my mentors, people that knew me well, my old pastor in Palmy, Ian Robertson. I can still remember ringing him and saying, man, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think about that? My close friends, people that knew me well, can you pray about that for me? What do you think? And they all came back with like, oh yeah, that's you. You'll be great at that. So my church at the time was Tawa Baptist down in Wellington, where we were living. And it's getting wise counsel and saying, this is what I'm sensing. What do you think about that? Can you pray into that for me? So, your own discernment, your own processing, and the voice of others. And then there's just, there's a peace that comes after that. And we kind of say to yourself, all right, I hear you. And God normally says, well, I've been telling you all along, but you got to do your process. And that's a process of testing, of discerning, of listening, of talking, of getting, the endorsement of others. So there's multiple aspects to that, but I am a huge fan of knowing who we are. When we know where our identity lies, that we're, a son or a daughter of Christ, that we're created in his image, that he's put unique things into us, Psalm 139, all that kind of stuff. Man, it took me a while to work that out, to be honest. I only discovered that as an adult and a bit of an older adult, but boy, is there powerful significance in that, and there's powerful peace that comes in that. So you get that, you know the ways wired you, discerning it becomes a little bit easier.
That's awesome, and sort of off the back of that, we now, obviously hindsight's a beautiful thing and a great thing, but having submitted to that call, taking that call up, and started wandering through this process with God, you felt the sense of the call on your life. And we look at some of the significant things that I obviously know about that you've done and you've been doing and still yet to do, I suppose. But if we talk about you coming to Windsor Park and being at Windsor Park Baptist Church, and some of the significant things that, because you talk about finding your purpose, your identity, and understanding the way you're wired. What were some of those things that you've had the real privilege of leading, standing up? Some significant things that God has wired Grant Harris to be the senior pastor of this church and navigate them through a very interesting and unique season and help build something special there. What are some of those things, Grant, that you've been a part of?
Yeah, well, what I find most interesting about myself is I come from a fairly conservative background. My parents would still say that today. My whole family is a fairly conservative, almost traditional kind of base, and it's solid and it's great. No qualms with that. But when I started getting into adulthood and started building my career and started thinking about the world, I found that I was quite entrepreneurial. That I used to think a lot about. I always used to remember sitting in my office. I had an office in the Terrace in Wellington, and thinking about the marketplace to which I was involved. And as a Christian, thinking, man, why isn't the church involved in the marketplace? Why isn't the church? I mean, I'm here as a Christian, and I kind of felt God say, that's good, but why isn't the church engaging in all of this? And I used to think about that all the time, and that kind of sparked a lot of my thinking and a lot of what I do these days. And so then when I kind of ended up in ministry, and I was in New Plymouth, and I used to think about this all the time. There was a couple of people in that church, a couple of guys that I got to know, and we used to talk about these things. And we did a bunch of stuff down there, but it wasn't really the fulfillment of some of my thinking. But I did a lot of reading and a lot of thinking, a lot of praying about it. And when Windsor Park opened up, when they gave me a call, there was only one reason that I felt God say to me, this is where I want you to go. He said to me, you're going to be able to work out all of the stuff that you've thought about that you can't do in Taranaki because of its size, and our church was kind of on the edge of town, all that kind of stuff. He said, you're going to actually be able to put into practice all what I've wired you for. And that was the only reason. We didn't have any desire to come to Auckland. Windsor Park in itself, it was a church, wasn't in itself attractive to us any more than what we were involved in. It was that sense of God saying, you're going to be able to use the gifts that I've planted in you and developed and that you've thought about. And true to his word, that's been exactly the case. So again, it was just that natural process of God continuing to grow me and stretch me, seasons of life, being able to think and dream. And I've always prayed this when I think stupid dreams. I always pray, God, if this is not of you, change the dream. I don't want to be wasting my time thinking about stuff that's not really of you. And there's been certain things, and there are still certain things in me that haven't come to fruition yet. But I still pray that prayer, and I'm like, in His time, He makes all things beautiful. So, even COVID, right? This season, which is nuts. I always say, I think I missed the class at Kerry, how to lead a church through a worldwide pandemic. I wasn't playing ping pong that day. Like, none of us know how to do this, right? In our lifetime, none of us have had to lead a church through this craziness. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, what? God's wired me for this. And it's a huge challenge, and I'm relishing it. And I look back at all these things, and you've just got to trust that God is working out His plan in your life. Maybe not for today, maybe not for next week, but in His time, He'll use you for those things. And so I can look back at all these moments now and think, he was good.
No, that's right, man. And I mean, that's great advice and it's great insight. And I think about, so you come to Windsor Park, and I mean, you guys are running. You get obviously a bit different at the moment, but your cafe running on site, and then you've got the way you use some of the facilities around that space, and you've got the childcare centres going, and then you had something interesting like the was it the funeral home as an enterprise, and then even some of the other social services that you guys had set up. So you become this pastor, entrepreneur, and then you go and get involved in something like the New Zealand Breakers. I mean, how does that happen? So on top of everything else, you go and pick up sport. What happens there?
I tell you, it was a God thing. I mean, what's not, right? That was a weird set of events, actually. We'd literally just shifted here, and we were renting a house close by, and it had a little income part to it, next to it, and that was separately rented. And somebody was looking at that one day, and I just got chatting to this lady in the driveway. She didn't end up renting it, but I was just chatting to her, and it happened to be Ross Giorgio's wife. And Ross Giorgio was head of sport chaplaincy here for a while. He's now global sport chaplaincy in Germany. And we just got talking about church and faith and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm really loving it. I think I must have dropped a seed, because when we shifted up here, I didn't quite recognize it. But our kids had all played basketball. I coached basketball, we're doing all that. And so when we shifted to the shore, it was like, we're living in Breakers territory. So we went along, started going along to their games, which was cool. And then I had this chat with Rula in the driveway. And then I just get this call from Ross a few months later, and he's like, you chatted to my wife in a driveway. The Breakers are looking for a chaplain. Would you be interested in that? And I can remember going home to the kids and saying, hey, might be the chaplain for the Breakers. And they're like, that's cool. And they said, what's that? I says, I don't know. Sounds cool. It sounds cool. And so, yeah, again, it was just, for me, it was just that I didn't even know what sport chaplaincy was about, but I kind of had an idea of chaplaincy, obviously. And this before sport chaplaincy in New Zealand was even in existence in itself. So it was just an opportunity. And I remember I had to go meet the owners of the team, Paul and Liz Blackwell, and they seemed good with me. And they were like, but you got to go meet the head coach, which was Andre Lamanis at the time. And so I had to go down to Breakers head office and have a chat to Andre. And, Andre's a pretty rough kind of Aussie guy. He's, no, you'll be all right, mate. And then, so he's like, come down to training. And so I remember the next day going into training, and I was just sitting on the stands. And at the end, they go into a huddle, and he says, come over here, mate. And he's like, this is Grant. He's the new chaplain. And I remember thinking, yeah, that's me. I don't know what a chaplain does. I'll Google it. So again, just an opportunity, right? And I've always felt that, I have a heart for the marketplace, but in a bigger sense of that, I have a heart for mission in our world, how the church connects with the world, in society. And, I worked in business, obviously. I love my connections. I love having a wide group of connections. And so for me, that was like, I love sport. I love the basketball. I love that my job enabled me the flexibility to be a chaplain because their base is just around the corner from us. I love that my leadership team were all good with that. So it was just like, as a pastor, I'm preaching, we've got to reach out, we've got to connect with people, we've got to build relationships. And I just felt God say, well, here's your thing. Because as a pastor, you can spend all our time, Cliff, that you can spend all your time engrossed in church and Christians. And, that's very easy to do. It's the default position.
Yep.
So I just like, I got to practice what I preach. So, down there to this day, that they don't give a toss about any of that stuff that you just mentioned, entrepreneur, pastor, leader, whatever. They don't give a toss about any of that. All they want to know is, can I trust this guy? Can I talk to him? So for me, it's pretty humbling to be a chaplain because I'm literally the bottom of the heap, really. In that regards, I'm not paid by the team. That's our model. I get shirts and stuff. I get some Nikes, but overall, it's just me. I have to be me. And so chaplaincy is all about the ministry of presence, just being there for people, which is what I hated for probably half of it, because I'd drive down there and I was like, oh, God, give me something to do. Can I fill the water bottles? Can I pick up the towels? Can I do something? And I go to the manager at the time. It was Chris. And I was like, oh, bro, can I help you do something? He's like, no, we're under control. And God would just say, see, you just have to be. You just have to be present. You just have to. And so that was a big personal learning curve for me. So I'm a fan of chaplaincy.
No, that's great. And I suppose on that note, for anyone that's, because I know there's some big, not just sports fans, but Jesus fans and the symmetry between the two. What would be your one piece of advice if someone's hearing you say this right now, and something in their spirit's leaping like, wow, sport, God, mission, partnering the two. What would you say?
Get into it.
Get into it.
Give me a note. Let's message, let's chat. Look, at the end of the day, and I've said this for a number of years, we've just seen the tide flip slightly in sport chaplaincy. So I love chaplaincy generally. I think over recent years, chaplaincy is like an open door to the world that the church has not yet embraced. So I think in our whānau, the Baptists, we have more military chaplains than any other denomination right now. I know the guys at Devonport, I know some of them at Whenuapai and the Air Force. Man, the opportunities they get are amazing. I love military chaplains. I love hospital chaplains. I did a course once at Middlemore as called clinical pastoral education. I was a chaplain in the hospital. I hated it, but I love I love hospital chaplains. So I love the broad spectrum of chaplains because chaplains get access and they have the ability to speak faith and life into people that the church just doesn't touch. So I love chaplaincy generally. I love sport chaplaincy because I love sport and that's where I'm involved with. And specifically, I love basketball chaplaincy because I love basketball. So I kind of narrow it to that filter. And I'm like, so for those of us that love Jesus, that want to connect with our world, the reality is the world isn't driving past churches generally and saying, oh, let's go to church today. Generally speaking, every now and then. But on the whole, that's not happening. So we've got to think to ourselves, so how do we be the church in the world? And chaplaincy is like an open door. So sport chaplaincy is interesting because I've been involved since we formed the actual organization here in New Zealand. Really, only last year it tipped over from we have more demand than we have supply. So right now we have vacancies for chaplains that we can't find people for, and that's the position we wanted to get to. And everywhere we kind of go, we speak into it, and everywhere that I go, I speak into it. It's a pretty easy sell, and people are pretty open to it. That's what I find. That, Cliff, that's been your thing. So news came out today that the Tasmanian Huskies are relocating to Auckland. It'll be the Auckland Huskies, and I'm like, oh, Kevin Braswell has been appointed the head coach. I know Kevin. He was head coach of the Breakers. He was a player. I know Kevin well. I know all the organisation. So next week I'll be onto the phone. You guys need a chaplain. And they'll say, of course we do, Grant. Get us one. And I'll be like, yeah, okay, there's the challenge. So there's an open door, and I just think God's doing something pretty special in that space. So if someone's out there thinking, well, what's chaplaincy about? Obviously, they can speak to you, Cliff, or me, or whoever. It's like, yeah, there's an open door there. Have the courage just to stand up and start, pushing on that door, wherever you might be based, whatever sport you're in, whether it be league or, union or basketball or whatever. We're getting a little bit of traction in that space in sports. And that's what we want, right? That's amazing. So if you've got a heart to serve people, if you don't mind just lingering with intent, if you can just chat about nothing, like I'm doing right now, just chatting about nothing. If you can just do that, you don't mind rocking up to people, God does the rest. And that's been my experience, just be present and allow the Spirit to lead you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was going to ask you, your love of basketball help with your tenure at the Breakers? For anyone out there, like, would you look for a sport that you're interested in?
Oh, I think it makes it interesting. But to be fair, I'm pretty useless at basketball. So sometimes at shoot around, I mean, they just laugh at me when I go and have some shots. It's not pretty. But, I guess I like basketball, but equally the bigger thing is you love people. So, if you love people and you don't mind getting beside people, I mean, having an interest in a particular sport is great, but the greater love is people. I feel like I could go into any organization now. Now that I have a bit of experience and understand it a bit more, I could go into any kind of sporting code and get beside people. So the people come first. And the sport is a nice bonus.
That's awesome, Grant. And again, if someone is interested, message us, get in contact with us. There is lots of opportunity and support around that. What we're going to do in a moment is we are going to pull through some questions for Grant. But before we get to that, bro, I want to sort of bring all of this stuff that we've talked about with you in your life together. And I want to sort of land here before we bring up some photos of yours. And it's really around this thought or this question with all the things you've got to carry in your life, the busyness of it all. How do you do that and do that well? How do you manage all of this, Grant? I mean, we're talking pastoring and leading people. We're talking about being entrepreneurial or being business-minded and overseeing these things. That means you're going to have to be on governance boards. That means you're going to have a chaplain here, as we've heard about that. And then you're a father still. That doesn't go away. You're still a husband, become a grandfather, and then still being that child of God, which is having a relationship and ensuring that's well with him. But honestly, how does one do that well, healthily, and keep going? Because now we're in COVID-19. You mentioned that, and it's challenging. And I think maybe some of your insights, your tips, your help might just help anyone. It doesn't matter what walk of life they're in, whatever they're carrying. I'm sure that you must have some sort of strategies, disciplines to help you.
No, for sure. Having a good sense of humor will last. That's good. Got to have a laugh. But I think it goes a little bit back to what I was talking about earlier. You've got to know the way that God's wired you, and you've just got to be comfortable with that. So when you know who you are and what you're capable of, you've got to then avoid the comparison trap, and that's the biggest killer of it all. When you say all that stuff about me and it's nice, and I'm kind of like, I just am who I am. Don't put me on no pedestal, and I don't get my identity in any of that. If God took it all away tomorrow, I've got to be fine with that, and I've had to work at that. And sometimes things happen and it kind of hurts. And I'm like, you know what? My identity is not found in any of my positions. It's not found in any of my achievements. My identity is found in who I am as a son of God. And so that's strong. So I don't get my sense of significance out of any of that stuff. I enjoy it, and I'll work hard and all of that kind of stuff, all for that. but I also know the way that God's wired me, and He's wired me with a certain capacity, and He's wired me with a certain ability to be able to manage a lot of stuff, and to be able to, not take stuff too seriously. And He's managed me with, I guess, a brain and a really good wife that tells me sometimes that I'm not behaving well. I'm not behaving well. I'm working too hard. And so I talk about it this way. When you know your capacity, it's a really good place to be. And I know my capacity, and sometimes I get to it and I just slip over it. And so I've learned to recognize that. I've learned to recognize, all right, I've got too much on right now. I need to pull back for some stuff. I need to not worry about some stuff that I'm worrying about. And so I recognize those signs physically within my body. I know when I'm not sleeping very well. I know historically I'm a little bit over it now, but for a lot of my life, I've had eczema. And so when that breaks out, it's physically, it's been like a sign of my body that kind of says, okay, you're stressing about something too much here. Yeah. And now that I'm getting close to 50, there are other little, aches and pains. So again, knowing who I am, but also recognizing that God has given me the ability to be able to juggle a bunch of balls and to do those as well as I can. But it's easy for you to say that about me, but it's very easy for me to look at somebody else and go, man, I wish I was like them. Sure. Wish I could host a show on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday night from 9 to 10. I wish I could be like whoever. And I've had to really watch that, because I've fallen into that trap in the past and saying, if I just work harder at this, I'll be like that person. I'll never be like that person. And when I came to Windsor Park, it was interesting. The team that were kind of on the process was saying, when I asked them a question, I said, my predecessor was a big character. And I said, do you want somebody like him? Because I said to them, if you want someone to fill his shoes and to do things the way he did, I said, it's not me. I knew myself well enough at that time to say, I'm very different. I lead differently. I'm a different character, and that's all good. Like, if you're looking for someone like that, I'm not your person. I'm like this. And so I often say that to my kids when they're sort of looking at jobs or careers. It's like, just be who you are. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. And God takes care of the rest. And it's a very comforting position to know who you are and what you're capable of, and not to worry about that. We've all got different levels. So
No, that's
at
so
the same time, like I say, a bit of a laugh sometimes. And sometimes when I get a bit busy, a bit stressed, I'm like, it's so frustrating.
Well, I would totally agree with you that having a laugh is so important. Having a sense of humor is not just important, man, it's just blimmin' helpful sometimes that you can go away, because you're literally trying to laugh yourself out of your cry, I think
you're not wrong.
You're just trying to get past that. So I appreciate that, man. And I think that's going to be really helpful for a lot of people that are watching, listening, even reflecting back on it over time. I think is going to be really great. So what we're going to do, bro,
can I say one more thing on that?
Yeah, go.
Okay. The other thing that I'll say is sometimes you find yourself in a position where you feel totally incapable for it. And I believe that, when God gives you gifts and abilities, sometimes you'll find yourself getting asked to do something, or you'll find yourself, leading something or whatever, serving somewhere, and you'll say to yourself, man, I am so ill-equipped for this. If they really knew me, they wouldn't ask me to do this. And I often feel like that sometimes, chairing boards or being asked to speak at various things. And I often sit in the car beforehand and go, who am I to be doing this? This is nuts. But I then say to myself, but God, if you've opened that door, you know what? I'm going to do the very best that I can. And I'm just going to chill out in who I am. I'm just going to throw myself into that, and I'll let you take care of it. So when God gives you an open door, when he gives you an opportunity, just grasp it. And look, sometimes it comes back to bite you a little bit, and you can have a laugh about it. But, at the end of the day, like I say, the magic happens outside our comfort zones. That's where God pushes us. That's where we grow and where we learn. So if you find a door being opened, push on it and see what's behind it.
Awesome, man. So good. Thank you so much for that. And let's pull up some photos. We'll have some photos, and we'll get you just to talk them through as they move through, explain what's going on, who they are, and then we'll pull up some questions that people have asked off the back of that amazing conversation. So let's fire some photos up. Let's have a look.
Yeah, that's my favorite photo, just to show you can have a bit of a laugh at myself. In fact, I showed that to my kids last night, that very picture. I think I was 5, or must have been 7. I got glasses when I was 7. And so that was in the summer of Palmy, which is kind of weird because Palmy doesn't really have summers, but they must have back in the day. So, growing up in Palmy, I look at that picture, and that's what helps me have a sense of humor.
It had a summer. It had a summer because you pulled those legs out, bro. That's why.
Tuck in that t-shirt. That's so I got that. To have a bit of a laugh. Preachers and Sneakers is a great. I follow several sites. One is Preachers and Sneakers. The other is Prophets and Watches. That's a real funny Instagram as well. And then another one is Worship Fails. Follow all of those on Instagram. They're 3 really great sites that provide some good laughs. And so my son bought me that sweatshirt for my birthday last year, and that photo is significant because we have a little batch down in Mangakino in the central North Island, just in from Tokoroa. And that's where we go to chill. That's where I get my re-energy from. So that's down there. So any photo that's taken down there says to me, that's where I go. That's where God rejuvenates me. I love it down there. Very cool. Here we go. So several things, or 2 things significant with that picture. Number 1, I look pretty good as compared to my kid photo. Number 2, I'm coming up 50, so I can see my stomach poking out. Number 3, breakers, you get some merch along the way. But most significant about that picture, it was taken 2 weeks into lockdown, and my wife Jo had given me a haircut. First time she'd given me a haircut in our married life, and I thought she did pretty well. She gave me one subsequently, and I'll probably go get it fixed up soon. But I thought that was a pretty good haircut. Looking pretty good that day, actually.
Looking slick, man. She's done well.
It's my latest staff picture down at. See, I needed a haircut on that. I should have had a haircut before that too. But you can see that I'm getting old.
Nice, bro. Appreciate it. And this one.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, my favorite place, a little river down in Mangakino that we go down and fish from. And again, I just like that picture because I thought I was looking pretty cool, if I don't say so myself. Yeah. And every couple of years, except this year, we take a team of our year 12 and 13s over to Los Angeles, and we serve with an organization called the Dream Center. And we call it an exposure trip. We expose young people to Skid Row and to some of the challenging situations of LA with a view to disciple them around how to get a worldview, a God worldview in LA that helps them when they come back to Auckland. So I really like that picture. One of the things that we do with the team is we take them to a baseball game. So on one of the trips, I think it was 2 trips ago, we went to the Angels down in Anaheim, and I bought a hat, and I just really like that picture. I got to be honest.
Very smooth.
It's good, bro.
Oh yeah, there we are. It's my preaching look. Speaking at a sport chaplaincy hui that we had a couple of years in Rotorua, and I was obviously saying something important because look at that passion.
Oh something
profound.
Who'd not want to be a chaplain after that speech?
Tell you. Come join the fun.
That's awesome, bro. Hey, look, we are gonna fire through a few questions now. And let's see what we've got. I've seen a few come up, so let's bring them through. It sounds like you're a yes man to all of those God opportunities. Was there a time where you said no to something, and what was that? What did you miss out on or regret because you said no?
Yeah, well, the challenge of saying no to God is you don't know what you miss out on because you miss out on it. Certainly there are times when you say no. Am I a yes man?
Eventually,
eventually. I went through a bit of a crisis. Maybe a personal thing. So beginning of last year, when we came to Auckland, I felt that God said, "Come for 10 years," which was kind of medium term. And so when that came up, it put me in particular, in a bit of a crisis. I was like, "All right, God, this anniversary is up. What's next?" And it put me into a bit of a spin. Took me 6 months to work through it, really, maybe slightly longer than that. And when I felt God say, "Actually, I want you to stay," and I was like, "Nah, I've got some other opportunities. I'm not a stayer. I'm always a move on guy. I've never been in a job that long anyway to start with." And so it was easy to say no to God there because I was like, "No, I don't want to stay. I want the next thing." And I actually had to say yes. Okay, I trust you. It doesn't feel natural to me, but I trust you. So I guess I said no and yes. But like I say, it doesn't always come easy.
Yeah, cool. Ose, any interesting story about a time you preached to a tough crowd, and how did you navigate that? I'm sure you got plenty.
Yeah, well, we're a North Shore crowd. I can't wait to come speak at the Render Gathering because I'm sure you guys are much more interactive. We're North Shore, they aren't quite as dynamic, so I speak to a tough crowd. But none of them are watching, by the way. I always find it interesting when you do go speak in other environments, like you know your own people. So when you're speaking to your own people, you look at the ones that encourage you generally, and you avoid the ones that have gone to sleep. But so sometimes you go into an environment and a different church perhaps, and it's just a whole different crowd. You don't know anyone.
Yeah,
and you do find it tough just to kind of build that rapport with people. And so I always take the approach of saying, oh, well, sometimes you make a joke and it's like, I don't even know if that joke worked, but whatever, I'm just going to keep going. So yeah, tough crowds. I mean, as a speaker, you just learn to adjust, and you learn to kind of know when to bring the energy or know when to calm things down. Yeah, it's, I've been doing this a few years now, I guess, still learning, but, have learned some stuff on the road.
No, that's great. Taryn, again, do your children serve in church? And if so, in what area each? And we obviously
I'll say one story about that one. When Joe and I came into ministry, we spent a lot of time talking about how we were going to parent our kids, because like a lot of people, we'd seen a lot of pastors who kids, and we heard them when we were at college. Kids came in and said, they hate the church, and some of them hated their dads, and we were like, whoa, we weren't expecting this. This is nuts. We spent a lot of time talking about how we would parent our kids as pastors, and touch wood, or touch my computer, or touch my webcam. So far, so good. Yeah, look, our 4 kids are very engaged in Windsor Park. They serve. Our youngest is a youth leader. I work up from that. So he's very involved in our youth ministry. Our daughter, she shifted to Brisbane a couple months ago. She, again, was a youth leader. Our son, he is actually just become a board member on our social enterprise company. That's really significant. We really love raising up young leaders, and he is one of them. So he works in business as well. So so he serves in multiple different areas. Actually, his wife Jess works for me, so she's pretty involved in the church. She's our communications advisor. And then our eldest daughter, she just had a baby, but they're all part of our faith community. And look, that's a huge blessing, knowing that we do life and faith together as a family. And we've worked hard at that in our family, to be real about church and to be real about faith. That's been big for us.
Awesome, man. That's so good to hear. Great. We're going to take this last question. Then what we'll do, Grant, is any other questions that we have for you, we will pull together, we'll send them to you, and then we'll get them back later. But the last one here from Tita is, Pastor Grant, do you have a mentor, or who do you look up to and why?
Yeah, I really love mentoring. So I have mentors and I mentor people, and I really believe in that circular thing of mentoring. I'm old enough to have got a few runs on the board now, but that does not mean that I know everything. Yeah, so I have kind of 2 mentors, and I guess I have a range of mentors depending on situations. But Cliff, you know Murray Cottle. He's a career pastor. He's in his 70s now. Still works for the Baptist Northern Association in Auckland. But during my whole ministry career, he's been a mentor to me. He's guided me on a number of different things, and he's been my go-to guy for ministry. He's helped me on both my churches that I've gone to and processing that. And still a go-to guy for me. And I have the highest respect for him, because he just loves the church, and he loves me. And so that's been huge. Also, Martin Norrie he was the chair of the board of Windsor when I came here, and I'd served with him on the Carey board before that. But over the last 12 years, he's been a very significant mentor to me. Many times I go to him and ask him about various things. So I'm a bit of a believer in mentoring, or having go-to people that can help you in certain circumstances. You've got something that you're facing, and it might be in a specific area, and you're like, you know what, maybe that person's going to be able to help me and process that. So I'm a big believer in that. And like I say, because I've got a few runs on the board now, I mentor a few younger pastors who think, I'm the old guy now, we can go to him. So life's come full circle.
That's cool, man. And I agree. Mentoring so important, looking after and raising up the next generation. And Grant, I think you're doing an amazing job at it, bro. And we need people like yourself to keep doing what you're doing and keep mentoring others. I know personally, in the time I've been privileged to know, that I appreciate the relationship as well, and gleaned a lot. Having to not just come out there, but also when I get to catch up with you, it's always something to learn and talk about. So it's fantastic. In saying that, I do want to honor you tonight, Grant, and I want to give you this section is called Our Thoughts Be Gathering, but I want to give you the final word on tonight. I actually want to ask you, what's one thing in this season, what's one encouragement or something the Holy Spirit's just been speaking to you about that you could just share with us tonight? A simple thought to take away, to encourage people, to challenge them to keep going.
Yeah. One thing that I wrote about this a number of weeks ago. Often when thoughts come to me, I'm like, I got to write this down so I don't forget them. I kind of felt God saying to me, you know what, I prepared you for this season, both personally, but also us as a community as well. And I just wrote down 2 pages of stuff that we've done over the last couple of years, or things that have happened to us, or even things that we spoke about last year, super powerful. You know, we at the end of last year, we sat down with a bunch of churches that we work with, and we said, what are we going to preach about in this year? And so I started a block this week on Nehemiah, talking about rebuilding the wall and how we rebuilding community. We planned that at the end of last year, and we put that date in the diary for this Sunday, having no idea what would happen. I mean, what a date, you know, May the 17th, first week of level 2. We're talking about rebuilding our society, and I'm talking about a story in the Bible that was rebuilding a society. God's gone before us, and God goes before us, and he prepares us for things. And normally it's in hindsight that we see that. And it's important that we remember that when stuff happens to us, it's not a surprise to God. You know, he knows what's coming up for us. And if we're willing to embrace that sense of being prepared for what the future holds, then we carry a peace in the midst of that. And we have we know that he's with us. We know that he's holding us. We don't know what the future holds. And there'll be people, there's pain to come, right? You know, economically, there'll be people that will lose their jobs. I know people that are already doing that. There will be pain in those situations. Yeah. But God is still with us with that, and he knows that pain. And so we've got to carry it, you know, we've got to give it over to him. And the passage I'm preaching from this week talks about when Nehemiah realized that the wall had been broken down, they weren't rebuilding it. It said, you know, he mourned and he cried and he fasted and he prayed. And he had a real emotion that this sucks. And it's okay to be real with that, but he gave it to God. So in this season, you know what? God's gone before us already. He knows what's ahead of us. And we have to press into him. We have to trust him. We have to allow his spirit to hold us and comfort us through whatever pain is going to be there. But there will be another day. And, you know, there's that old saying, it's going to be okay in the end. And if it's not the end, then there's still things are going to happen, right? So trust that God is with us, that he is still good, that he knows our situations, and, you know, just hold on to him, be real about our emotions. But you'll look back in a year and you go, wow, you know what? If we trust him through these times, things will happen, and we'll just be able to say, he's got us. And that just helps us for the next stage as well. Helps us for the next thing that's going to come up. So, you know, I was pretty excited looking back at a whole myriad of different things for us. Even for me personally, it's like, you know, I wrestled with my own sense of call last year. And then all my, you know, my staff and people around me have said, you know what, Grant, you came through that and God had you here for this season, you know, because we're stable. You know, you know us, we're journeying together. And so again, it's kind of like, even personally, it's right. You know, God went ahead of me. So trust that he's going ahead of you, and trust that he has good plans for you. And, you know, it's a great place to be able to reflect backwards, live in the present, and then in faith and with courage, look forwards to whatever is ahead. And he's good. You know, people said to us, you know, and I sometimes engage at my own peril, sometimes on media online and stuff like that. And, you know, people bag the church and they bag God, you know. And I'm like, I don't believe God caused the COVID-19. That doesn't stick with me, because my God doesn't go out and hurt people. But the world is broken, so it happened. And God allows it to happen so that we can press into him. And so it's kind of like, you know, the world is tough. Tough things happen. But God is the one thing that does not change, that is totally present with us, that holds us through whatever the future holds. So I guess that's what I want to say to people. There's going to be some pain. We all know that. We're bracing for it as a church, and plenty of people are bracing for it in our country. But we've got to be there for one another, and that's the great strength of community. That's the great strength of faith communities. It's a great strength of the Render Gathering. It's a great strength of Windsor Park. It's a great strength of being part of God's people and connecting in and pushing into that so that we can carry one another. And you know what? We do that as churches. And what I love about tonight is that we're doing it as churches. And you know me, I'm a collaborator. We the more we can do together, the better the kingdom's going to be honored. So hang in there with each other, hang in there with God, and good things will come.
Great. Fantastic. Amazing. I'm going to let that be the last word tonight, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your wisdom. So, Pastor Grant, we honor you tonight. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your sharing, for your insight, for having a laugh with us. Some of it might have been at your expense, but we do, nevertheless, we appreciate the laughter. But more importantly, we appreciate what God's done in your life because of the effect it's having today, and the encouragement that it gives all of us to press into our own identity. And like you said, to trust that God is ahead of all of us and he's got it. And that's the greatest thing that we can say. So in saying that, if there's anyone watching tonight that is wondering about this Jesus, this God we're talking about, please reach out. If there's something that's sparked your interest tonight, please reach in, and we would love to be able to if not us, navigate you toward the right church or the place that God is really purposing and calling you to as well. And it might just be Windsor Park, or it might be another church up the road, but it's got to be somewhere God has a place and a purpose for you. So again, brother, thank you so much for tonight. It's been real fun. Bodie, thank you, my bro. I appreciate your time again.